We got Gators breakdown here. We know we're business.
Gators breakdown, because there's never a dull moment in Gator Nation.
The Gators Breakdown podcast is ready to go. I'm your host, David Waters. You can find me on social media at GatorDave_SEC. Coming at you, even more Florida Miami talk, taking on the Canes Saturday night down there in Coral Gables. Joining me on this episode, as he does last few weeks, Sponge right here, and his good friend Faro, kind of paired together with a Talking Ball podcast. And Faro's a Miami fan, so I was like, hey, reach out to him and let's see if he wants to talk some Canes. So we're going to talk a little bit of Canes. Did my prediction episode earlier this week, of course, but then we'll get an expert point of view for the Miami Hurricanes. So, hey, Faro, thanks for hopping on Gators Breakdown, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, Dave.
Yeah. So what's the relationship between you guys? I think the audience has got to know a little bit.
Yeah. Well, Sponge and I have known each other for about, 30 years now? Went to high school together, played football together. We always talk ball as the podcast goes, and our friends hate us sometimes because we get into very heated debates a lot of times. But yeah, we've been great friends since high school for the most part.
Old Forest Rebels, baby. Yeah, my man used to block on the O-line for us, and then he didn't really block for me because I was on the outside, but he blocked for the quarterback to hopefully give me some time to get open to get down the field. But yeah, we did that, and then he had a little stint in college, played for the JU Dolphins for a little while, and just always, like I say, talking smack. Just me and the boys, we still, like I say, get together and watch games together, and like I say, break down games, and just in all retrospect, like I say, we love college football. Obviously, we love the Gators. He loves the Canes. But we haven't had too many of these games in the last 30 years.
Hey, with now the expanded SEC schedule, I have no idea when Florida and Miami play again.
Yeah, we were just talking about that last night.
Yeah. And so it's like, it's one of those. There's the stats have been crazy too. Like, I know Florida hadn't beaten a ranked Miami team since 1982, something like that. So I'm like, I was 2 at that time. It was those. I remember that the game where we had 2 safeties in the game and got blown out. I think it was 1985 or something. So yeah, the rivalry hasn't been played in much effect. And then on top of that, especially down the latter stretch, we had the Tebow win, but we've really been unsuccessful down playing there and obviously last year. So let's get them off the schedule then,
Going to that, there was a stat I saw. I was trying to find it. Oh, yeah. 2002 was the last time the Gators beat an AP top 5 opponent as an unranked team.
Wow.
Okay.
And that was here in Jacksonville versus Georgia. That was the Gus Scott game we were talking about last week.
Oh, when Gus ran it back for him. Pick
six.
DJ Shockley.
Yeah. David Green. David Green wasn't playing good, but comes in. Mark Richt was sprinkling DJ Shockley in here or there, and then it's just
that was.
But that was the last time an unranked Florida team beat an AP top 5 opponent.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the good thing about that is they were good for so many years.
You read my mind where I was going. I was like, well, at least we were. Some of that is we were ranked a good bit, so we weren't unranked. But that was Luke's first year, so that was kind of starting the outside of Meyer where we were unranked a good bit.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, it went that stretch where basically you lose Steve before you got Urban. So
yeah.
I mean, yeah, we had that stretch obviously in the 90s with Steve, like we talked about last week. When I was, at that USF game, I'm sitting there thinking all right, look at all these SEC championships we won. And then you see the gaps and you're like, you had some sprinkled in seasons of, okay, we were pretty good, but it's still, it's like, again, where we are right now is just, it's in a sense mind baffling. And I know we haven't even touched upon what happened last week. I know you've already beat the dead horse again. Talking USF, now talking LSU and DJ and all that stuff this whole week with everybody that you've had on the pod. And like I say, it's like we went through it last night, and it's just it's crazy to think how quick this team's trajectory and where they were when we started talking, in July. It's crazy.
Yep. Not good. And this Miami team's rolling right now. So that's where we getting into it right here. So everybody hit that like button, subscribe right here on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. Leave some comments out there what you think about this matchup as well. So let's get it going. Faro, hey, look, 3-0 start for the Canes. Big win over Notre Dame. Beat a USF team that beat Florida the week before as well to contribute to a 3-0 start. What's been the biggest surprise so far for the team?
So far is how the defense has been playing. The defense has been communicating, flying to the ball. Corey Hetherman has been doing a great job so far, taking over a defense that looked lackluster last year, that just at times looked out of sorts. Teams were outflanking them, just doing simple motions, going back and forth. And now this year, you see the intensity. You see the guys just communicating at every level, from the D-line all the way back to the safeties and being in position. There have been a couple blown coverages this year, but for the most part, I think that how the defense has been playing for me has been the surprise.
Yeah, well, it's opposite for Florida. So, hey,
right,
we're surprised when the offense is not playing good, and that's going to be the matchup right there with the Miami defense and Florida offense. We'll get into that matchup a bit, but yes, Sponge, and we talked about it. You and I both picked Miami to beat Notre Dame. Early in the season in that first week matchup, and still certainly I think for me surprised kind of just how fast it came together and how good Miami has looked with Carson Beck, with the new look receivers, with the new DC, and I mean it's come about pretty fast. And Sponge, that was something we talked about all offseason. This is an interesting angle to me. You look at Florida, you look at Clemson, you're like, hey, returning quarterback, different ages. Clemson's got a little bit more experience, but still, you were returning quarterbacks in some ways, returning, a lot of production for Clemson in Florida. And you compared it to a Miami, you compared it to a LSU, teams that were hit the transfer portal a little bit heavy, and you thought you'd be able to bank on this experience a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's been the teams who have hit the transfer portal that have actually started the season pretty well.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what's happening. And like we said it the other day, this is a new day and age in college football. Like you can ultimately flip that roster quick if you get the right pieces, if you hit right. And you can see where 1 year Florida State's done it twice now with Seams. They hit it, a couple of years ago when they hit those receivers with Jordan Travis. Then obviously they didn't do a good job with DJ Uiagalelei. And then now Castellanos comboed with Gus. Is like now that's flipped that quick. And then you talk about, we had optimism going in because we had DJ. Yes, he doesn't have that experience like a Cade Klubnik, but yeah, Clemson had, all those guys who are going to get picked in the NFL draft next year. We thought our defense was going to be good. We thought our offensive line was going to be good. And so far, those two teams, Clemson and Florida, are kind of reeling, and they didn't do a good job. To whereas, a team like Miami and LSU, that's why they're ranked in the top 5. Now, the thing that I think we're running into, like I was talking to Farrell last night, Miami's way better offensively than LSU is. You know what I'm saying? And I think they're comparable defensively, but that's like Farrell just said, that defense is playing up to a higher level right now for Miami than they were last year so far in just the early part of the season. But they've also played a common opponent, which they smashed. And then they beat, a team who was ranked in the top 10 to start the season, who has got a lot of high expectations. So I think the experience of Carson Beck, everybody was just like, oh, how's Carson going to look? What's he going to do? And, he's played at Georgia, man. He's won a national title. He's played a lot of games in this type of environment. He's going to be just fine. Unless that injury was just going to make it to where his arm was, he couldn't throw balls downfield. Sure. Let's see what it looks like. And it looks just fine. And so the meshing of his new weapons, their running game, their offensive line, that's why their offense is clicking. So if the good part is their defense is, made well improved from last year, that's why they're a damn tough out for sure.
For sure. Far we bring it up, Carson Beck. We all remember Cam Ward, and that was a lot of surprise last year of how well he was able to play game 1 against Florida last year and continued all through the entire season. Carson Beck comes in, another transfer. How is the offense similar? How does it look different? For me, I guess from the untrained hurricane eye, Cam Ward was still really good with the unscripted type of plays. He can make something. It seems like to me Beck is still a little in the process. It's more of a process-oriented offense. He's not going to run around and make things happen like Cam Ward. It's 3-step, 5-step, 7-step, and he wants to get the ball out. Sure, Cam Ward wanted to do that too, but if it didn't happen, he's still able to go make a play happen.
Oh, 100%. I think the biggest thing is Shannon Dawson having ties with Todd Monken and those guys talking about Carson before he got there. So going into the spring, Shannon pretty much found out the things Carson likes. And the reason why Carson is there, he's giving him full autonomy at the line of scrimmage to, make changes at the line of scrimmage, to change out a run play, pass play. I think the difference between Cam's a gunslinger. He wants to throw the ball. If he could throw it 50 times a game, he wants to. Whereas Carson's going to read the defense a little bit more and put you in better situations. That's not a knock on Cam, but I think Carson is, like you said, he's more process driven. Hey, let's run the ball right here. The biggest thing that for me is for Carson not to turn the ball over. So I think that's going to be big this week. Can the Gators, put him in bad situations and make a wrong read? But so far this season, Carson's taken over the offense. He's gelled with the new receivers in the running game, and having that great offensive line in front of him has helped a lot. And with the short period of time that he's been playing since he missed spring and part of fall camp.
Yes, Sponge. I mean, we go back to it. It's right there in where we're all at in Jacksonville. I mean, Carson's struggling right here against the Gators, tossing interceptions, keeping Florida in it. And certainly, I think his only 2 interceptions are last week versus USF, right?
Yeah. Mainly the second one was it was a tip. Well, yeah. One was a tip ball where Malachi Tony, he didn't realize he had a vert like he did. He jumped up and tipped the ball. It was going to the receiver behind, and it was a tip ball. And then the second one, he got pressured and kind of threw off on his back foot where he was getting hit.
Yeah, so Florida's got to replicate. So what we 100%. Saw in Jacksonville last year to get this defense in there. So, but yeah, I mean, I'm not completely shocked that Carson, like you said, it was just how fast would he overcome the injury. In my mind, I was hoping it would be a little slower, but it doesn't look like it is.
No, definitely not. Like I say, he's played a lot of college football, and like I think in a sense, since he didn't have the greatest year last year, I think a lot of people kind of had written him off a little bit. And then you get the terrible Tommy John's shoulder surgery injury, so with the surgery and all that, and you're like, okay, new offense, but what it's done, and we talked about it last night. He's getting the swagger off of him. He's feeling good. He's looking good with these receivers are, Georgia. We know like some of their part of their offense has been, the lack of, down threat receivers. Ladd obviously is a really good player. Bowers is a really good tight end, one of the best, in the country when he was playing. So he had 2 of those guys that he was throwing to the year that he really played well, and both of those guys are playing at a high level in the NFL. The next season, when he didn't have those safety valves and those guys he could count on, it went a little down statistic-wise. But, I think the injury and all that, people kind of like counted him out. And, I think he's kind of showing how he's playing that, okay, I hear all you guys, and I'm about to show you what I can do. So he's playing at a super high level in those first couple games. And like I say, again, Miami looks really good. Like, it just kind of they were good last year. They just had some misfortune late in the season, how they just didn't take advantage. And a lot of that was due to that defense. And what's funny now is, we talked about the Gators and how the defense was, kind of an afterthought for us. And now we got a good defense and we can't get our offense together, man. So it's like, we're just like, it's chaos, man. I don't know what to think. I don't even know what to think anymore.
we're all scrambling, man. We're scrambling. And here's the thing about it. And look, everybody knew Miami has a great offensive line. There's been too many recruiting battles between Florida and Miami for a lot of those guys that are starting on Miami's offensive line. And the thing is, it shouldn't be overlooked. If you follow recruiting, it's not a surprise that it turned out this way. The offensive line at Miami is actually better than the one he had at Georgia.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree. I think, that's Mario's calling card is the offensive line. And I think outside of him, Alex Maribal, who's probably one of the best offensive line coaches. If you saw that guy walk through the door, you would never think he was an offensive line coach. I think Maribal's probably like 5'5", 5'6", little guy. but yeah, they do a great job in teaching technique. And I think the biggest thing for me, since Mario's been there, if you've looked at offensive lines for the Canes for the last 20 years, they're not as big as these guys are. Across the board, outside of Brockenmeyer, we're talking about 6'5", 320, 330. Markel Bell, who's the left tackle, he's like 6'7", maybe 340. And they just do a great job of slide protecting, combo blocks and just protecting their quarterback. Even last year with Cam, the only time Cam really got sacked last year is when, he was going off cue, like you said earlier, and just trying to, do something else. But I think so far this season, they've kept Carson upright. He's got hit once or twice. In the Notre Dame game, I think they only gave up one sack. This past weekend, one sack where Carson ran out of the pocket to the right and got dumped on his head. But, that's the strong suit for the team, and that's what Mario wants to do every year. He wants a big, fast, physical offensive line.
Yeah, for sure. Let's get to the passing game a bit too. And hey, look, I mean, C.J. Daniels is the guy that I wanted Florida to get 2 cycles ago. He ends up going to LSU first, and now kind of got lost in the shuffle there with LSU last year, but hit the portal again now down there in Coral Gables. But he's not the only new face. I mean, it's true freshmen now are showing out as well. Malachi Tony, Joshua Moore, of course, was a big Florida-Miami recruiting battle as well. When I talk about it's surprising how fast it came together for Carson Beck, it's also because these receivers, I mean, it's new face receivers right here for the Canes.
Yeah, you lost 6 of your 6 of your guys last year, and you're returning. Who's the returning guy? The only guy at tight end really is Elijah Lofton. Outside of that, you bring in Keelan Marion from BYU transfer. Then you got C.J. Daniels, like you say, from LSU as well. So, they've developed a chemistry pretty fast, which is surprising. And then you throw in 2 true freshmen. So it seems like they're rolling guys in and out. Hopefully we get the tight ends more and people start to learn those guys' names. But at receiver, I thought they did a good job replacing a Restrepo, replacing Jacoby George and, a couple other guys that are in the NFL now.
All right, Farr, we'll keep it rolling right here. See if Sponge gets back in. But I talked beforehand, and we were kind of just off the pod talking. And if Florida's defense is going to find some success, I mean, look, it's a strong point of the team right now. And that front 7, Florida's linebackers, I think, really good. Now we know Caleb Banks is probably likely out for the rest of the season. So Florida's going to miss him up the middle, who could certainly make everybody around him so much better. So, look, of course, you got a couple games without him to kick the season off. But certainly you go back to the LSU game a bit, and you could see his presence right away of how he was commanding double teams, triple teams, and he opened it up for the guys around him. So Florida's got to find something there. But if Florida's defense is to find success, how do you think that looks with how this Miami offense has just come out on fire so far?
I think they have to change the pre-snap reads ahead of time. And then when he's making his checks, check into something else and just, try, like Sponge said, he's played over 40 games, so you're not going to confuse him too much. But that's one thing you got to try and do. And I expect Florida to try to blitz up the middle, up on the new offense, the new center in Brockenmeyer. And I think what the Canes will probably battle against that is probably having more 2 backs in to help block. But if Florida's going to do it, they're going to have to do like late stems, late pressures. I think UCF got back to Carson a couple times with some late blitzes. So I think that's what Florida has to do. Come up the middle and maybe come off the left side on Markel Bell, because going over the right side with Mao No is going to be tough. So, just changing the coverages and trying to make him think, play, a cat and mouse game, and, mixing some nice blitzes where they're coming up the middle, forcing him off his spot, because he's not as athletic as Cam Ward, but Carson is still athletic enough to get in and out of the pocket. But I think that's what Florida has to do to, just rough them up a little bit and get some shots on them.
Yeah, and I think for Florida, I talked about confidence in the front 7. We'll see what happens without Banks. It's kind of hard to, see, with this good offensive line Miami has. But my biggest concern is Florida's safeties right now. Castell, Thornton. Certainly, I think we just saw LSU try to take advantage. They had some success down the seams against Florida last week, but not really consistent. But we now know Nussmeier's not really consistent anyway. So that's part of the issue right there. But Carson Beck's playing much better. That down the seams, big plays with Florida safeties. That's the mismatch right now that worries me the most.
Yeah, and like in any game, if after a team comes off a loss, the next team you play are going to show you the same looks you probably saw the week before, just to see, did you fix that in the short period of time from one Saturday to the next Saturday? So, Miami's probably going to, like you say, if the safeties are the weak point, they're going to take some shots down the field. They're in the middle. That's why I hope where the tight ends kind of step up this week with Lofton and Bauman, getting in those seams and in the middle, and maybe settling down. And, one thing about Shannon Dawson, he's going to take his shots down the field. Yeah. Mario reins him in a little bit, a lot of it. Sponge and I always joke about how conservative it gets, but trust me, it's not Shannon Dawson wanting to be conservative. So hopefully, Miami can get down the field on the Gators. And then if the Gators got to turn the ball over, I think that's the biggest thing. Like we said last year, Carson had turnover problems. If for the Florida defense, if they could get some turnovers and put the offense in better situations, short fields, if we turn the ball over down in the red zone and Florida has to go 80 yards, that might be some problems. But if Florida's defense could cause some turnovers and give short fields to the offense, that might make it a long night for the Canes.
Yeah, for sure. Sponge, what we're talking about, I was like, I told you my biggest worry for Florida is the safeties. Castell and Thornton, going to Farrow's point, I know Miami will want to go down the field, and that's the group that worries me the most there with Florida safeties. But I mean, look, we hadn't really even talked about it. I don't want to overlook Mark Fletcher in this run game, because we already talked about the offensive line, of course, and it goes in pairs with that. But Sponge, first game without first game. Florida had the first couple games, but now we know Caleb Banks is not going to be part of this defense. So Florida's got to figure it out against a really good rushing attack too.
No, for sure. And we talked about that last night. He was asking me what the word on Caleb was, and I was like, "Yeah, he's out. He's done." And that you get him back, get an insert. For LSU, you're feeling good. For the most part, Florida's run. I mean, obviously you take LIU out, so they've really only played LSU and USF, and for the most part they did a good job of slowing LSU down, but LSU's had their own issues running the football, and we kind of knew that, and it showed up last weekend. They ripped off the one big run. If you take that off the stat sheet, they only had like 50 yards rushing. And South Florida, where they killed us was with the quarterback run, and Miami eliminated that completely in their game. And but Fletcher, he was one of those recruiting battles as well. Him and Trayon used to bang heads back in the days when we were at Trinity. He was at American Heritage Plantation. We played them, I think 3 years in a row. So I've seen this kid when he was, 16 years old. He's big, physical, and he's also quick, and he can hit the hole hard. And so Fletcher is going to be a tough out. And then even the Brown kid has been a pretty good, 1-2 punch with him. So their run game definitely, scares me a little bit, because the key to, like we said, if we can slow the run game down and maybe then get after Carson a little bit to pressure him to maybe throw us an interception or two, that's obviously going to be one of the keys to the game, is can we, kind of eliminate or slow the run game down to get them kind of into third and long situations, so that they can't just say it's 3rd and 2 and just turn around and hand it to Fletcher to pick up first down. So if you can get them into third and longer, shots, then that's where I think you'll have a chance to maybe make it a game. But, and goes back to the USF game. That was their thing. They were living in 3rd and 2 all day long. And they continue to pick up first downs. And luckily our defense bent but didn't break, and, held them to some field goals, and they didn't allow them to really score. Miami's way too explosive to where, they're going to hit some of those plays. And like you just said, the safeties, they haven't really been tested like that yet. And, these guys can get loose for the Canes for sure. So we got to limit that run game for sure.
Yeah, the run game is, to me, I think Miami wins by a couple scores. If the run game gets going, it's going to be more than that. Yeah. It's going to get ugly. And that's where I think Florida to be even in this game, I think you got to control that. You got to control that run game.
Totally.
So, all right, let's go to the other side a little bit too. We talk Florida offense, Miami defense. Faro, as an outsider view, everybody's heard me and Sponge talk about it. Did you expect anything like this from the Florida offense? I know you and I were speaking kind of beforehand. And look, Lagway's a young quarterback. You just guys put on the pedestal, maybe expecting too much, but I don't think we expected this fall, even as an outsider perspective. I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but it certainly seems like most people were kind of surprised where Lagway is at right now in this Florida offense.
It's amazing that you can't put it into words. Like you say, you didn't expect this. I didn't think DJ was going to have a Heisman type year like everyone was putting him on the pedestal, but I thought he still would be efficient. The games he played last year, he looked pretty good outside of the Tulane game. He missed the spring for the most part in summer fall camp. But, when everyone's talking about the offensive line and how you have 2 All-Americans on the offensive line. And I love the running backs at Florida with Barr and Jackson. So it's like, ease him into the season if you have to and just run the football.
Yeah, and instead, here we are in Baton Rouge, and he's throwing 50 times a game.
That's what I said last week.
50 times a game, 5 interceptions, and for whatever reason, you still don't want to trust your run game. So, yeah, it's puzzling. Play calling, play design, all kind of goes together right now of why Gator Nation's frustrated with this offense. And maybe this is a learning lesson, and you go down and just kind of ground and pound there in Coral Gables and try to get those play action deep shots, because that's kind of where I think the world you'll have to live in right now, and until maybe you get this bye week right after and get DJ something out of that bye week. But yeah, Sponge, I mean, it's certainly a tough matchup here. To me, the biggest mismatch, I just want you and I talked about it at work the other day. I'm definitely afraid of the right side of Florida's offensive line and Ruber Bain, Akeem Mesidor. It's a scary matchup right now. Whether Caden Jones, Bryce Lovett right now, it just don't matter to me with what we've seen from those 2 guys in that Miami pass rush so far.
Yeah, no, that is definitely like I say, Far and I've talked about it like that. Their D line and those 2 guys are monsters, and I love the way those dudes play. So we've had that struggles on that side, on that right side of the line. So they're gonna. It doesn't matter which guy's over there, and so for the sheer fact of can you get DJ through this game without getting him killed, is going to be one of the things. But they're going to be harassing all night long. And the good part about it is, a lot of times they don't really have to blitz either, because they can just get after you with their front. And so what does that do? That puts more guys in coverage. What does DJ struggle with? He struggles when there's more opposite teams' jerseys in the field of play, where he's got to throw it to our receivers who either A, aren't getting open, or B, he's bad mechanics and throwing balls, off his back foot, all that stuff, comboed with, play calls that just don't make sense at certain times of the game. And it's a combination of everything, man. And going back to what we were talking about with leaning on the offensive line, if it's allegedly this good to run the football, got good backs. I mean, Ball, we talked about it. Ball's averaging 6.5 yards a carry, but he's only averaging like 10 to 12 carries a game. And you got to lean on that, and I just don't understand why we weren't down 28 against LSU, so the game was tight. We threw LSU into the game by turning the ball over so much. So, but the problem now is, again, I think this is a really good I think this defense is probably might be their run defense might be better than LSU's.
Yep.
And so if you think, okay, well, let's just run it on no, you're going to get a loaded box, and they're going to shut your run game down to say, you know what, DJ, I see what you can do, buddy. So just throw us a couple. And that's basically what I think every team is going to do from here on out, So the scary proposition is, where are you getting better at? There's no get right game with the schedule, so it's like, okay, there's no like, let's just work on some stuff this week. I don't know what a bye week is going to get you, but a little grace. But again, this is where the matchup, to me, what scares me, is like, I feel like I don't have any confidence in anybody on the offensive side of the ball, whether it be the play caller, Billy, what he's calling at the times, deciding when to run, when to pass, throwing way too much, not relying on the run, DJ and his, problems right now. And, here's another one for you. Why is Aiden Mizell only getting like 10 reps a game?
Yeah, 9 passing snaps.
Like, how is that even possible when he's the guy? He caught the touchdown pass for you. He caught another like first down play for you. I just don't like that. I don't. Is that on Billy G? Is that on Billy Napier? I don't know. Who's subbing in, the receivers, and why? We love VB3 and he's made the most explosions. We're definitely obviously missing Dallas Wilson. We'd love to see what that would look like in this offense, but he's, out, and Sturdivant just hasn't been. I mean, he had a couple catches in this last game at least, but he also ran a bad route on that very first interception. And DJ threw a bad ball, so it's like, I don't have any confidence in anything offensively going up against a good Miami D. So I don't see where the recipe gets better this week than last week, honestly.
Yeah, forward, there's two players we talked about, Bain and Mesidor. I'm going to read some stat. My good friend Bud Davis on Twitter put out kind of like a play calling frequency chart.
I saw this one. Go ahead.
So tell me how this fits with the Miami defense, because right now for Florida's offense, only facing a light box 7% of the time versus a 6-man box 43% of the time versus a heavy box 44% of the time. And in the passing game, teams no blitz 77% of the time. They're only blitzing 23% of the time against this Florida offense right now.
Wow.
In this in the passing game. So going to Sponge's point, probably with these guys up front, you probably don't have to blitz. And stats so far are showing his teams aren't blitzing.
No, not at all. So here's the game. I kind of told Sponge last night, here's the game I want to see. I don't know if you've seen this on film, Dave, where Corey Hetherman has been doing a great job. He's been lining Ruben Bain up against, just say, your left tackle. And the next guy is not – so the two D tackles are over the center, the right guard, and then Mesidor's on the other end. So they've been testing teams to see, do you want to double team Bain or leave him one-on-one with your tackle? And teams that have been so far leaving him one-on-one, he's been beating them all season so far. So, who are you going to double team? Because like you said, Mesidor's just been playing out of this world. He's finally healthy. He's getting upfield. Those guys are meeting at the backfield. But to add more to the context of the defensive line, I think the key to this week, if Florida's going to try to run the ball, is how our defensive tackles play. How does Justin Scott, David Blade a transfer, and Ahmad Moten, can they control the middle and push up the middle and get pressure in DJ's face to help those defensive ends? But those two guys have been playing out of their mind. I joke and say it's a money year for Ruben Bain, because if he keeps on this track, he's not going to be at Miami next year.
And he missed this game last year.
Yeah. I think he played one snap.
Yep.
Yeah.
He got hurt very, very, very early in the game. So I'm sure for him, he's foaming at the mouth. Hey, you guys didn't need him last year. So who knows with that matchup in the swamp. But certainly we'll see what happens this week. But I'm sure he's ready to play for this one. So, all right, as we look for maybe a sliver of hope for the Florida offense Saturday night, we saw some deep passes completed by USF that eventually led to some scores. Maybe could connect some of that, to some of the struggles last year for the Canes, secondary and giving up big passing plays. It's probably fair to say it's not a big concern overall, but maybe the biggest concern for this defense. Yeah,
for sure. That's why Mario went out and got a whole new secondary outside of OJ Frederick and Damari Brown, the two corners. More likely they're going to be the starters. They've been starting. The safeties are new. They bring in Jacoby Thomas from Tennessee and then Poyser from Jacksonville State. And that's been the biggest thing is communication. Communication was awful last year. It was like the layers at the defense, they weren't communicating with each other. So if Florida's going to have opportunity, they test that secondary. The secondary really hasn't been tested this year outside of a couple bad, defensive plays, communicating between the guys. USF had a couple shots down the middle, and the Miami guys were just lost in coverage or whatever. But I think that's where Florida has to take advantage. Like you say, you get a Mizell on the field, and you hope a Sturdivant could be, hey, let's kill him in the middle. I'm curious to see how the secondary plays this week as well. The linebackers, you got to test those guys too. I don't know if you could put Basaint in coverage, not with Hanson, but more of a bigger receiver like a Sturdivant. Get some mismatches. Hopefully that could help the Florida offense.
Sorry, I got another show I got to go to, so I was texting that guy. I'm running a little bit behind. So, it's just, it's like Sponge was saying, is this really the week Florida figures it out? Like that's the part I have a hard time coming to grips with, that it's possible. Not only that, Florida and Billy Napier can't beat a good team on the road. It just hasn't happened. And so that's worrisome in and of itself, going back to some of the stats we talked about at the beginning of this episode of how far and how long it's been since Florida, as an unranked team, has beat an AP top 5 team. Well, now you're asking this team who can't win on the road to go try to do it on the road. So it stacks up against Florida. You hope, Sponge, because it's a rivalry game, that you find a spark, you find something. I don't, you and I talked about it last week. I don't want to hear wounded animal desperation mode, because you should have had that to start the season. You should have had that last week. It's feel better speak. That's all. That's all it is about the wounded animal mode. So it's, hey, just go find something. And I don't know if it's a great start to the game. I don't know if it's an early turn. I mean, I don't know what it is for Florida to figure out something to get in this game.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, we talked about how you should already have that hair on fire mentality. Like, that's the way you should play every game. You should play every game with the intensity that this is the most important game, and you win that game to move on to the next game. And I figured they'd play well last week at LSU. I thought they would. And again, for the most part, we realized this defense is pretty good. So the defense, if it can keep us in games, maybe we find something on offense, and then we can just be in a 4-quarter ball game and make something happen in the end. But to what I thought how we would play last week was, one of the two things was going to happen. We'd be in the game, and either the defense would, allow that drive like a USF, and LSU would go down and win the game, or we'd have a situation where, can we count on our offense to go down and kick a field goal or score a touchdown on the very last drive of the game? And I didn't have confidence in either one of those things. Now, it didn't come to that, but like I say, you can't even say if the game how much the game would have been different if they wouldn't have called that holding call on the ball touchdown. Yeah, that was a huge play, and we had a lot of momentum riding in that. But was DJ still going to throw 5 interceptions?
Mm-hmm.
More than likely. So sure, I think they're going to play inspired again. They're going to play well early, but the key is, this is a way better offense than they played last week. And then on the flip side, you're struggling on offense. So again, I just don't see how you come out fortuitous on this because of those reasons. Now, again, if you get some breaks your way, it's football. Maybe Carson does throw into coverage a couple of times and we get a pick six. Can we get a pick six? Or we get a busted blown coverage and, score. And then, we're slowing their run game down, or we're able to establish the run ourselves. Then, yeah, maybe we can get into a game to where it'll be a 4-quarter game. But that's the thing. We're not running away from Miami at all.
Yeah.
And so do I have confidence that you can even win a close game against Miami if you got into that situation again? And my answer is no right now, because, again, it goes back to what we always said is, like, you got to show me. And, like, they definitely haven't showed me or gave me any inspiration that they're going to basically be able to do anything like that. So I hope they play well. And sure, we hope they upset Miami and knock them off. But again, just the likelihood of that happening right now, the way this team is playing versus how Miami's playing, is like, yeah, I don't see it. I don't see it happening. So, like I say, hopefully they play well, and hopefully we got a good game. But I'm not counting on it.
Yeah, in my prediction on the previous episode, I said, to me, it's the run game for both teams. That's the key for me. For Miami, like I said earlier, it's to keep that in check from the game getting away from Florida. Like,
right.
If Miami gets the run game going, it's over. I mean, Carson will be even more comfortable than he is.
Yeah.
And for Florida, it's to keep DJ comfortable.
Yeah.
Find your own running game. So to me, it's the running game for both teams that, to me, either separate it or bring it up for Florida.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think for Miami, on the Miami side, can we get another fast start? The two big games we've played so far this year, we jumped on the two teams, Notre Dame and South Florida. It was 14-0 in our first 2 drives. So the other key for Florida will be, can they take advantage? Miami's hit little lulls in the game where the offense is going 3 and out for like 2-3 possessions. Can Florida score on those possessions where we're just lollygagging a little bit? It even happened last year. There were times in games where the offense would just go dormant. Some way, somehow, we can't run the ball, or someone slips, or a penalty or something like that. Can Florida take advantage of it? I think the keys to the game for Florida will be: can they run the football? Can they take advantage of turnovers? And don't give Miami a fast start. Don't give them a fast start to get Hard Rock going, because that's one of the craziest atmospheres when Miami's winning and they're being physical and they're beating teams up. That place turns into a nightclub. So that's what Florida has to do, and just take the air out of the building.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that about, I know Miami gets trashed on about their fans, and, when it's not going good, it does look bad. But when it is good, when it is rolling, that is a hard place to play. There's a bunch of Cane fans there for support. So, when the team is good, they do make it a home field advantage for the Canes. So, yeah, it's Florida's got their hands full for sure.
Definitely.
All right, guys. Hey, thanks for hopping on, Faro.
Hey,
Sponge.
thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, Sponge, all that good stuff, and I was wondering when you were going to put it upside down.
I had to.
All right, everybody. Hey, thanks to those guys one more time right here on Gators Breakdown, everybody. Hey, check us out. Previous prediction episode was the previous episode if you want to get my prediction for the game. But yes, you can probably figure out it's definitely Miami winning for the prediction that I have out there. So for Faro, for Sponge, everybody out there, thank you for listening to this episode of Gators Breakdown.